Cops of Reddit. What's the most bullsh sounding excuse you got that actually turned out to be true? My dad is an officer and he pulled someone over for speeding and running a red light and they said their breast implant burst. He called EMS to rush them to the hospital and turned out it didn't. It's actually very dangerous if they leak. Do you know why I pulled you over? My boob exploded. I used to work as a military police officer. I was working at the main gate one night and this guy tried to come on base but he didn't have any ID other than a driver's license, so I couldn't let him on. The guy told me that a general said he could come on but he didn't have any proof of that and he didn't know what the general's name was. It was also super late at night and he didn't seem to have any answers that would help us identify who he was. Long story short, the dude ended up being legit and was coming on base to be awarded a silver star the next day from that general. Former park ranger. First week in the job we pull up and see a couple of kids smoking in their car with the windows down. The city has an ordinance against smoking on park property, but it is too petty to give them a ticket. We approach the car and they are visibly nervous. My FTO, field training officer, looks through the windows and sees a couple of beer cans in the car. Bingo. We get them out and start running their info. They are all underage but old enough to smoke cigarettes. My FTO asks them where the beer came from. The driver says he recycles. FTO laughs and begins to search the car. I'm finishing up running their info, and these guys are being really respectful. FTO finishes searching the cab and goes to open the trunk. All of a sudden I hear him bust out laughing. He is laughing so hard he can barely breathe. He waves me over to look at the trunk of the car and it is level with crushed cans and bottles. My FTO said that he has heard that excuse for 20 years and this is the first time it was true. He walked up, uncuffed the driver and let him go. Not a cop, but I did get stopped by one for eating a taco. I worked at a community college in LA that had a high school right next to it. Well, there was a lot of substances sold through the fence at the high school, so there was always a cops driving up and down the street between the schools. Couldn't get a parking pass since I just worked at the school, so I always parked on that street. Hit up Taco Bell for lunch and was sitting in my car eating my double-decker tacos when a cop drove past. Next thing I know he's flipping a U-turn and heading right for me. He slides to a stop driver window to driver window and yells at "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Stunned, I just said eating my lunch. Well, he isn't buying it and says I'm hiding something. I just hold up my taco and looked so confused. He burst out laughing and peeled out. Saw him a few times after that and he always waved and had the biggest grin on his face. My friend had something similar happen. He got a burrito he'd been craving and had it in his lap. At a stoplight he's looking down at the burrito salivating over it when a police pulls over and tells him to get off his phone. He just lifted up the burrito and the officer laughed and drove away. The way he tells it cracks everyone up. Not a cop. Family friend was. Pulled a guy over who was speeding profusely. Guy was obviously disheveled. He said he was headed to the hospital because he had a tick on his PP. Cop was confused, but he escorted him there. Then waited in the lobby to check on him, see if he was blowing smoke. After a while, he asked the desk what was going on. Why it took so long to take a tick off his PP. Her reply, "It wasn't on it. It was in it." I cringed. My first ever real call was for a flasher at the local park. When I got there and finally found him, it was a mentally impaired young man 16-17 who had a layer of headphones on in a full Pooh Bear. I said, "Hey man, come here, what the hell is going on? You know you have to keep your pants on, especially at the park." He goes on to tell me he had bad itching down his pants and couldn't take it anymore, so he had to rip his pants off and was running home to get help. I said, "Come on, you couldn't make it home first?" He said, "No, I had ants in my pants." As sure as according to more than one witness's account. He had been sitting in a sandbox playing at the park and accidentally on a nest of rodents that had crawled up his pant legs. Popped a college kid for shit driving and pulled 100 grams of weed off of him. Also, a 1-pound glass pipe shaped like a huge nail. No biggie. Also find weed under the other college kids in the car. Driver falls on the sword and tells me all of it is his and lets his friends walk free. I like this kid. However, during the search we find packaged addies and the cellophane of a cigarette pack with the top melted closed. Ask kid if he's dealing addies at school. Tell him I'm aware of the prescription pill epidemic. He says no and spends a huge yarn about how he only carries a few on him because he's had his orange pill bottle stolen so many times. Kid seems like a pretty good dude. I decided to take the X-Files approach. Supervisor tells me pursue charges for dealing blah blah blah. I tell the kid he has one chance to prove he's telling the truth. Shows me the broken glass under his driver's seat from a vehicle burglary. Gotta do better. I follow behind him back to his dorm. He lets me in and shows me the busted foot locker he kept them in under his bed. Dunno. Kinda weak. Supervisor's telling me to hurry and drop the axe. Tell him to do better. He calls one of the soccer team assistants up and we meet him in the locker room. Shows me the little wooden locker which has a broken lock. Assistant coach tells me they have replaced the lock on his cabinet 3 times. Campus security has numerous reports of medicine theft from this kid. Nice. I call supervisor up and tell him I have no grounds to pursue delivery charges. Poor bastard just kept getting his Adderalls jacked and being the big dumb meatball he was. He started packaging them like that. I end up talking to his best friend breaking up a house party a couple months later. Friend tells me kid is a stand-up guy who only uses weed due to extreme anxiety, totally believable from my interaction with him, and has never sold anything in his life. Friend thanked me and told me his buddy spoke well of me. Friend also tells me he had to drive his buddy to the hospital a few hours after I left from a panic attack due to the whole incident. I felt bad for the kid. So now, whenever I see him smoking up in his car in the mall parking lot I just wave. Stopped a guy on a suspended registration and he started getting upset. But not at me. I asked him why he's so upset. He says it's the wife's car. She stopped making payments and it got suspended. On top of that he was pissed because he was on the way to the new GFs and she was probably gonna dump him if he no-showed her. I issued him a criminal ticket, thinking he was gonna back off and leave the story. Instead he goes, I totally get why you gave me a ticket, but I don't want this girl to dump me. Smoke. Can you give me a ride there? I say fine. But you have to introduce me. Again thinking he'd back off the story. He says okay deal and away we go. We're sitting outside and this girl refuses to come out. So he puts me on the phone. I tell her that it's either she comes out and says hi or I bring him to jail. Out she comes. 11/10. Dude hit the effing jackpot. He also plead guilty to the ticket, haha. I never told him to do that but I got a kick out of it. I like to think it was him giving me a wave back. I'm running booking one night. Guy gets brought in for possessing a truly stupendous amount of substances. I'm talking like 2 Rubbermaid totes full of shrooms, a huge bag of weed, and enough heroin to overdose half the county. Well, says he, I'm a informant and they told me to make the drop so they could be there and raid the crap out of everybody and let me go for helping. Aha. Right. Face left please. Guy is like I'm telling you dude. They're gonna be super pissed that you country reset fed up their bust. Whatever. Get in the holding cell and shut up. About 3 hours later 3 guys show up. D agents. They're super pissed that our deputies are fed up their bust. I go back to the holding cell to let the guy out. And he's just like they're super pissed huh? Yeah. Told you so. I had a similar call to this one night. I was on patrol, running traffic, and ran a tag through the state's DMV system. Tag comes back immediately with a DHS warning, tone and everything, alerting that the driver was on the terrorist watch list and advised not to make contact with the driver under any circumstances. I thought maybe I'd run the wrong plate, so I tried it again. Sometimes the tags are hard to read and things show up wrong. The tag returned again as the driver being on the no contact list. I was about to advise dispatch that of the situation when they raised me on the radio, saying someone from DHS had called about me running the plates twice and demanded that I not make contact with the vehicle. Needless to say, I left him alone. But it was crazy spooky how fast they called after I'd run the plate. Serious watchdogs. Former cop here. I was behind a vehicle that couldn't stay in the lane. kept swerving, etc. It was 1 AM. And I think another drunk idiot on the road. Pull him over. Guy is a straight up a-hole to me. Cursed me out. Yelling at me. And I notice his speech is slurred. I get him out to car. And I can smell a fruity smell on his breath and he has to lean against the car for support. I ask him how much he had to drink and he tells me to F off. By this point I'm ready to bring him in for a DUI. But I just had a feeling something wasn't right. I called EMS to come check him. Blood sugar was at 40. Not drunk. Just a diabetic. If I would have arrested him, he probably would have died before I finished the paperwork. Go with your gut if something doesn't seem right. I was driving with my fiancé and we went through a roadblock where they checked registration and we get to the cops and they ask for our registration. I'm sitting in the passenger seat so I open up the glove box and right there is a clear and marked baggie filled to the brim with catnip. I completely forgot it was there and just froze. Wide-eyed. I turned to look at the cop shining his light through my open window and he's frozen too. Just staring at the baggie with this look on his face like really? I just started immediately professing OMG I swear to God this is catnip. You can take it and smell it or test it or whatever like I swear. And at this point it's just so ridiculous that I start cracking up. And the cop takes it and reasonably deduces I'm telling the truth. And he starts laughing and calls his partner over and tells her what happened and they both just cackled away for a minute and sent us on our way. I went to a disturbance at a backyard BBQ once. Turns out it was a bunch of Roma gypsies. As I was trying to figure out what was going on I had some old lady approach me and want to talk to me off to the side. She told me she was an informant for the FBI and that if I left, she would be able to get some information on a matter the FBI was interested in. I rolled my eyes and thanked her and said I would be out of there as soon as I could make sure there was no violence going on. Anyway I determined it was just verbal so I cleared the call and went back in service. About 15 to 30 minutes later dispatch radioed me to head back to the station. I got there and got a message to call some FBI field office and ask for a certain agent. I called and sure as this agent said he understood I spoke with his informant and wanted to know everything she told me. Blew my mind. Mid-July in like 2008. Young kid going 93 in a 55. I swing and he immediately pulls over. Approaching the car. His first words before I can even start speaking. My dog died. He hung himself. I gotta get back before my mom gets home. What JPG? Anyway. He calls other family members. His aunt, uncle and 2 cousins come out to the stop and between all their sobbing, they verify that the dog had actually hopped over the fence on a leash runner and couldn't get back over. Everyone's crying now. They showed me a photo on their phone. Apparently they found the dog and called the kid at work and he just left. I didn't even bother verifying further than that. Cousin drove the kid's car back so they could take care of the dog and prepare for mom. Some said that I should have wrote him. But losing an animal sucks enough. He knew he effed up and adding financial burden to him wasn't going to help him or me. I'm glad there are cops out there who understand both how horrible losing a dog is and how financially hard it is to get a ticket as a kid. Insurance is already too high. Of course kids should be more careful and it's not the cops' fault they got pulled over. But you did the right thing in this scenario. My dad was a cop and my favorite story of his goes like this. He's a young cop in a rough neighborhood. It's so late that the stoplights are flashing red, meaning treated like a stop sign. Out of nowhere this pink caddy goes rolling through the intersection. My dad pulls him over. A big black dude was driving. The caddy had fur interior. Dice in the mirror. A real pimp car if you know what I mean. My dad goes, "Sir, do you know you ran that light back there?" And this guy says, "Officer, I do believe I got between the flashes." My dad was laughing so hard he had to let the guy go. Not a cop, but I had a run-in with one that was really funny once. When I was 18. I was on a double date with a friend. And we stepped out of a restaurant to smoke. A cop came up and started harassing us, telling us there had been break-ins into cars in the area. Eventually, he said he needed to pat us down. And he pulled a brown paper bag out of my friend's pocket. He got a smug look on his face and asked, So, what's in here? Huh? My friend said. The Emancipation Proclamation with a completely straight face. The cop opened a bag, pulled out a small booklet, got embarrassed, and let us go. My friend had been to the Lincoln Museum earlier that day and did actually have a small copy of the Emancipation Proclamation in his pocket. Cop here got a call of a domestic dispute that sounded very heated and a lot of banging was heard. Get to scene and I can hear someone yelling and swearing and brawling. Doesn't sound good at all. Guy answers the door, shirt off and angry, but seems bewildered as to why police had been called. He told me he was building IKEA furniture. Sounds like the most bullsh thing. But we enter, see the new IKEA furniture half set up and no one else is home. Color me surprised.